Welcome to the show today at Ideagen TV. Today we're excited as always to have guest host Anita Whitehead, KPMG, along with Todd Lohr from KPMG as well. Welcome, Anita and Todd. What a beautiful day.
Thank you, George, and we're thrilled to be back with Ideagen for the Global Innovation Summit. I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. So this isn't the 2020 anyone expected. We thought we had a handle on the business, economic, and political trends impacting our companies, but instead we were thrown into the COVID-19 challenge. Every business and industry is experiencing a unique set of risks and impacts as they begin to reopen. And as we begin to think about reopening, organizations are crafting their own path forward. Coupled with this is an alphabet soup of recovery patterns, which are influenced by many factors. With so much uncertainty, it can be really difficult to predict the right moves. So I'd like to start with Todd. In your role at KPMG, how are we approaching our own Restarting America initiative?
Great, thanks, Anita. So there's a couple ways that we're thinking about what we're calling, overall the Restart America work. And it's really two different elements, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on the framework that we're considering. One is obviously as a large organization, a global employer, we have our own challenges and how we think about getting our workforce back into some of the physical locations. So we've started, early on, first in March, really thinking about what it looks like as far as first, getting our folks safely to work and transition from their homes. And now as we start kind of entering the next chapter, how we're going to get them back into the workforce. I think what is also the dual side of this is we're spending a lot of time, not only from our own perspective on getting our employees back safely into the physical office space. We tend to stay away from the back to work because I think we'd all agree we've all been working, as much, if not more, in the last weeks and months. But really, how do we get our workforce back into closer proximity to our workspaces? But then also spending a lot of time thinking about this with our clients and how we're helping our clients think through this as well. And so it's been interesting because the two of those are really informing one another as we're talking to a number of clients in this space, understanding what their challenges are, what their opportunities are, how they're thinking about it with the experts that they've employed. And same on our side, we're actually, being able to come up with a broader framework for what that looks like. And the framework itself is made up of 5 core areas that we're thinking about. The first is a risk framework. So how do you actually understand the risk associated to returning to the physical work environment? How do you manage that risk? And it's made up of everything from, the community threat level. So where you are is very different, right? So I live in Chicago. That has a different dynamic as far as the risk of COVID-19 versus if I'm sitting in a more rural part of the country. So understanding that specific risk and also understanding individual risk. If I have, underlying health conditions or other factors about me personally, I have very specific individual risks. So coming up with frameworks to help organizations think about those risks in ways to make the right informed policy decisions for how they return. The second is really, one of the things that is interesting is the HR workforce considerations. So how do you think about your workforce broadly? How are you going to, what job classifications need to come back and at what point do they need to come back? There's a lot of discussions there. There's a huge element of employee relations and change management as it relates to how you communicate that. This is obviously a very, trying time for everyone, including employees and our own employees at the firm. And so making sure that we're balancing all of those needs at that level. The third major pillar for us is really the partner ecosystem. How do you work within the government regulatory areas, your employees, your healthcare providers, medical insurance? There's a whole ecosystem of people that are playing here in a very complex, dynamic world that changes, not even daily, almost hourly. So how do you create an ecosystem view to be able to manage through the change that's we've already been through and that is still to come? The fourth, which is probably and I'll go into more detail around this, the technology side. My role in the firm is helping drive our technology solutions, both for KPMG as well as for our clients as well. So I'm spending quite a bit of time personally on what are the myriad of technology choices, decisions, how do we use technology as we start looking at the restart campaign. And the last, and probably one of the more important aspects that we're seeing ourselves and clients embracing is this concept of having a integrated and holistic program management functionality so that you can actually pull all the pieces together. And I think we've done a really nice job helping our clients with this, as well as ourselves, on understanding all the moving pieces and making sure that we're coordinated, especially at the large global scale that we are as an organization.
Thanks, Todd. I'd be curious, are you seeing any differences across industries and other learnings that you've gathered?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that you're seeing specifically across industries is, there are a lot of industries that have not necessarily left the physical workspace, right? So whether it's utilities, whether it's certain government agencies, people within delivery, manufacturing, there's a whole host. And thankfully, as a consumer, I'm glad, I'm still able to get groceries and I'm still able to get my Amazon deliveries, et cetera. There's a whole host of folks that have never actually, been able to leave the work environment. So you're seeing that is probably the most initial dichotomy. There's industries that have been able to work from home, maybe not ideally, but have been able to figure it out. And they have I guess, a little bit different of a return strategy as it relates to how soon, what that looks like, how they actually communicate that. I would see the nice part about being able to help clients that have never really left kind of the physical locations is we're able to get a lot of those lessons learned and apply to other clients that may be able to start slowly reopening over the summer months or the months ahead, including ourselves. And so that's one of the nice areas we can kind of get those initial lessons learned from the folks that have had to respond quickly. We've helped a number of clients stand up applications within the first couple of days of how are you going to have people check in? What happens if someone gets sick? How do you do contact tracing in a manual way? And then we've been able to take those initial learnings and then really, as time progresses and we have more time, get more sophisticated in how we're thinking about it, how we're using, advanced data science, low-code applications, a whole host of other things to be able to scale it better. So some of the other things that we're seeing just as a general trend, and as the technologist here, it's I think it kind of. It's interesting that I say this, but technology is going to be critical, but it's not, that might actually be some of the easiest parts of this. The technology is it's complex, but it's fairly straightforward. We know how to build technology as an organization. The policy perspective related to your employees and to the change management and the acceptance of your workforce and what it means in a very trying time, that's going to be some of the harder stuff, some of the softer skills that are going to be really critical. Thankfully, I think we've thought through a lot from a technology perspective on how we can help drive the adoption and the change and enable it with technology instead of not advancing it with the technology.
So talking of technology, could you just go into a bit more detail on just what you see as the role and what we're actually doing around that as well?
Yeah, so when you think about the why technology, I think there's three primary factors that I would consider why you need technology for this. And the first is probably scale. When I speak with a lot of clients, they have the policies, they've defined this is how it's going to work. I need to have people checking in. I need to, understand, who you're in contact with. There's a number of use cases in the current environment that most organizations have already defined. The challenge is, right now, not everyone's kind of back in a scaled environment, and so you're able to manually handle that with email, with some of the existing technical, capability that you have that's just, more basic functionality. The challenge is when you start thinking about scaling that in an organization with thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people outside of regions, countries globally, that becomes really untenable. You're not going to be able to have everyone email you every morning to let you know that they're okay in a very large organization. So scale is going to be absolutely critical in kind of the return to office scenario. Technology is going to be key to how we're going to scale. The second component to that is really around consistency of the risk framework and the policy frameworks, right? So as you think about every organization today is setting forth, this is offices are open, this is when we're opening offices, this is when we need to close offices, this is when we want people to work remotely, we want people to come in, when they can travel. There's a lot of new policy frameworks that every organization is defining. The challenge is the decisioning, the data, all of the things that are informing those policy decisions is changing hourly. And it's going to be really hard to inform all of those key decision makers in a decentralized model about all of those policies, about all of those decisions, without having some kind of consistently applied data visualization, communication, or even rules-based modules that help kind of adjudicate some of that for the policymakers. So I think consistency of policy application is going to be critical using technology. And the last component, and certainly not the least, probably the most important, as I said earlier, around the change associated to this, is the experience. We've spent a lot of time thinking about, I need to be able to communicate with our employees on a day-to-day basis. Okay, well, how am I going to do that? I need technology. Okay, that's great, but if they're not going to use the technology, that's not going to do me any good. So how do I create a technology experience that is really, centered on the design of the employee, around their experience, and really coming at a place of overall wellness versus just, a checking in app. A lot of things that we're seeing in the market is just, click this box if you're okay, but it's really how do you actually get to some of the emotional well-being, to the sentiment of the workforce, their overall wellness, giving them access to other value-add things within the application is something that we think is going to be critical to make this not about just checking in, but really driving towards a broader employee experience. So that's something that we're building into our thinking.
Very cool. So I guess as we close, what should companies be thinking about as they really start to reopen?
I think some of the things that I would think about, and I guess I'll gear this answer maybe more a little bit toward the technology. I think I referenced some of the broader policy frameworks, and I think you want to make sure that you're thinking about those 5 areas that I started the conversation with. But from a technology perspective, it's a pretty vast set of technology that you need. Everything from a mobile experience. So an application that you would work with your employees, directly interfacing with, that obviously is going to require, something that you'll need to build for them to have that day-to-day interaction with, whether it's checking in or reporting status or understanding that offices are opened or closed and communicating to provide that wellness experience. So that's one of the key areas that we're focused in on, is building out that mobile application experience. The second, kind of component of that is really that dashboard, that management system, so to speak, shows the status of your workforce, the status of your office, your physical locations, your policies, being able to push those policies in real time, all of that data integration that I discussed earlier. So having capabilities around that are going to be critical. And then to advance the scale concept, using workflow, low-code case management type applications to be able to drive those policies end to end and be able to manage some of the complexities of the process. In addition to that, I think a lot of organizations are also starting to think about how are they going to integrate contact tracing, what's available in the market, what does remote health monitoring look like, what are some of the options there, how do I think about IoT or Internet of Things to be able to integrate all of these things, whether it's sensors in your physical locations or on devices, being able to really drive that. So there's a lot of really advanced technology considerations for where we're going. I think what's most critical today is think about what is your overarching policy framework as an organization and where you can use technology to meet the needs today versus the needs in the future.
Thank you, Todd. I mean, such great insights, and I know this will be helpful for everyone. And George, thank you for the time today and for all the good work Ideagen is doing to bring all of our companies together.
Great. Thank you.